Hi, this is Larry Huppen. I'm the Medical Director at ProLab Orthotics, and in this video I'm going to do an overview of the ProLab prescription form. In subsequent videos I will look specifically at our section on pathology-specific orthoses, specialty orthoses. I'll compare vacuum form versus direct milled orthotics, and then walk you through how to write a prescription basically a la carte, where you choose your material, the size and the cast work, the rear foot post, top cover options, and forefoot extensions. Alright, so let's start at the top here. You'll see this part is pretty basic. It's just name of the patient. Please put your account number in here if it's not already on your form. A couple things that are helpful: a medical record number if you have one. We would like to know if the feet are very asymmetric. The reason for that is that if the feet are very different from each other and you send in two casts that look very different, we may question whether those were mislabeled. So if you can just note that they were asymmetric, that really helps. Obviously male or female. The patient's weight is very important. That helps us decide the thickness of the material and the rigidity of the material we can provide for you. Shoe size is critical if we're putting a cover on the orthoses. Not very important if we're not putting a cover on there. And if you've enclosed a shoe, please check that off. We do require a shoe for a couple different types of devices. Orthoses that we're making for ski boots and ice skates, for example, we require at least the inner boot. And for soccer shoes, it's beneficial to have that cleat available. So now we go down to Part A, and the first section here is our pathology-specific orthoses. And in this situation, what we've done is we've looked at the literature as to what is the best orthosis for a particular pathology. This is currently being updated as we find new literature. We will change these prescriptions. For example, a patient with metatarsalgia, there is evidence in the literature that we want an orthosis that conforms very close to the arch of the foot and that has cushion under the forefoot and incorporates a metatarsal pad or a metatarsal bar. So all those items are included. You can find on our website a list of what is included in each of these, and in the video that is specifically on pathology-specific orthoses, I'll show you exactly where to find that. Over here we have our specialty orthoses. These are mostly accommodative and soft devices, or they are dress orthoses. For example, a Cobra dress orthosis, a featherweight, which is an EVA orthosis, a graphite dress, and the whole orthotic dress. And then we have our ProRobic, which is a sport device, the UCBL. We'll go over those in detail in the video on specialty orthoses. And then over here we have our truly accommodative devices. Now these are the only devices for which we need a semi-weight bearing cast. Because these are non-corrected, they're not balanced, there's no expansion added, so this has to be a semi-weight bearing cast. In fact, these are the only devices for which we accept a semi-weight bearing cast. All other functional orthoses do require a non-weight bearing, either plaster cast of the foot, STS sock of the foot, or a laser image of the foot using a sharp shaped scanner. Foot has to be in neutral position, non-weight bearing, mid-tarsal joint locked, and first ray plantar flex. So we do not accept foam boxes for functional orthoses. There is actually literature that shows it's almost impossible to get a good capture of the foot in that situation. Almost always when you do bear weight, it elevates the first ray and you end up with excessive varus within the forefoot. All right, let's go down to Part B. Here, this is where you would write a prescription basically a la carte. Here you'll pick your material, a polypropylene shell, for example, and then from here we can either do vacuum formed or direct milled, and we do have a short video that goes over that in detail. From there you pick either the thickness of the polypropylene or you can pick the shell rigidity. Easiest way is actually pick the shell rigidity. Most of the time you're going to want a semi-rigid device, and in that case we would pick the thickness of the polypropylene based on several factors, primarily the patient's weight, but even the arch height can make a difference in that a patient with a very high arch, that extra curvature leads to a more rigid orthosis than that with a flat arch. So it actually is probably the easiest for you just to choose your rigidity and let us choose which thickness of orthosis to make from there. Then we go down to size and cast work. This is essentially where you're going to define how supportive and how corrective your orthosis is going to be. Heel cup depth, how wide will the device be, cast fill, whether or not you want a medial skive, whether you want the device inverted, and then shell accommodations such as medial flanges, plantar fascial grooves, sweet spots, which are accommodations within the shell for prominences such as a navicular sweet spot, or for a prominent navicular, or a first ray cutout. And again, we have a complete video on filling out this section, and in there we can go over more detail on how to do each of these. From there you go down to the rear foot post section. You can pick either a standard post, a spot grind, which is no post, but the polypropylene shell is ground flat on the bottom, a strip post, which is the anterior portion of a rear foot post, or a hole. We grind a hole through the polypropylene so it sits very low in the shoe. You can choose your post motion here, whether you want the post made of polypropylene or EVA. Now with a vacuum form polypropylene, EVA is the standard, and with a direct milled polypropylene, polypropylene post is the only post available for direct milled polypropylene orthoses. Then you can choose whether or not you want the post beveled. Now in default is to bevel the post both medial and lateral, but for example, for a patient with lateral ankle instability, you may want to leave it unbeveled on the lateral aspect. That will essentially make a longer lever arm from the edge of the orthosis laterally to the subtalar joint axis, get them to pronate a little bit faster, and help decrease lateral ankle instability. Then you can choose your top cover, what length it should be, whether to the toes, the sulcus, or to the mets. And then whether you want it glued all the way down, or just halfway, or just on the heel. By gluing it halfway, for example, it makes it very easy to make adjustments such as to a metatarsal pad or a metatarsal bar. Then you choose your material. Our default material is 3mm soft EVA. It's a very long-lasting material, easy to work with, conforms well to deep heel cups and other modifications. I like to use it a lot with, especially for athletic patients. We'll glue a thin layer of Poron for some extra cushion to the bottom. We then have our diabetic top cover, which is a leather, P-cell, which is a plastizote-like material, and some Poron. We can just do a leather top cover. Nylene is a combination of nylon and neoprene. It's Spenco essentially. We can use our sport material, which is an EVA with a suede-like top on top of it, and then we just have plain vinyl. We can also put a bottom cover on the bottom of the orthosis. That is out of vinyl. That allows the orthosis to slip in and out of the shoe much easier, but keep in mind that once we put a bottom cover on the device, it's much more difficult to make adjustments to it. Finally, we come to the forefoot extensions. Well, not finally, we still have special editions over here. Then you'll come to forefoot extensions. You'll choose your length, whether you want it to toes or sulcus, and whether or not you want it beveled onto the top of the orthosis. And then you choose your material, Poron, Corex, or EVA. You choose the thickness. And then for example, let's say you're doing a valgus forefoot extension. You might choose to the sulcus, 3-degree valgus extension, which foot, and you want it made out of Corex. Now, if you choose one of these down here under Add, we do have defaults. For example, most of these are made out of Corex 3mm, unless you choose something up here above that, which would override what is down here. We also have the reverse Morton's extension and a Morton's extension. And then over here we have our special editions. Arch pads, for example, if you have a patient who has an orthosis where the arch doesn't conform as close as you would like to the arch of the foot, you can add an arch pad on top of it. We can put an EVA fill under the arch of the orthosis. We can add a heel lift to it. A heel pad is a cushioned pad of Poron in the heel cup of the orthosis. Horseshoe pad is also a pad in the heel. The idea is to take pressure off a localized bursa or the area of a painful heel spur under the heel. A standard teardrop shaped metatarsal pad. We have a metatarsal bar, which is Poron on top of the orthosis, full width, left full thickness distally and beveled proximally. Neuroma pad, which is a thinner metatarsal pad or narrower metatarsal pad, and then a toe filler for amputations. Finally, down here we can add in any special instructions you might want. We have 2 rush options available. We have a 1-day rush or a 3-day rush. Those prices you can find from the from customer service, and then if there's any special shipping you want, you can choose that right here. If you're doing a reorder, you can put the image number of the orthosis, which is usually on the bottom of the device, in this little box here, so we can easily find that patient's orthoses. Now, on the subsequent videos, we'll look in more detail at each of these sections here. I want to make one other thing clear, is that if you check off one of these specialty orthoses up here, they each have standard modifications on them, but you can override those modifications down here. The other thing I think is important is if you're going to choose a pathology-specific orthosis, you only need to choose one of them, and you actually only should choose one of them. If you choose 2, even if you have 2 different diagnoses, that's telling us that to make 2 completely separate orthoses, and we will need to give you a call to find out what is the best choice for your particular patient. It's best actually to call us ahead of time. One of our podiatrists is on call every weekday, and we're happy to walk through that prescription with you, help you come up with the best prescription for your patient. So at this point, I'd suggest that you go ahead and watch the other videos on pathology-specific orthoses, specialty orthoses, the different types of polypropylene devices, and then how to write a complete prescription.